I don't know what to do, guys, because right now, I'm trying to think of a way to explain the emotions that are currently inside of me. Just yesterday, I woke up only to see that someone had slided divorce papers under my door. Do you know the kind of reaction I had? I had been so shocked that I almost fainted right there and then. How could someone just slide divorce papers under someone's door? I know some of you might be wondering how that is possible. Well, the divorce papers didn't just fall from the sky. It was sent by someone, and I'm 100% sure that I know who that is. My husband is the one who sent the divorce papers because I can clearly see that his name is written on it. I don't know where to start from, guys, because this is deeper than my words can ever convey. There's actually more to what led to this divorce. That's what I believe, and that's why I'm still currently trying to figure everything out. I don't know what suddenly happened that could have been so drastic that my husband would try to divorce me without my knowledge. If we had a prior argument to this, then it would have made sense, but there's absolutely nothing that happened that could have pointed to a divorce. It's sudden and not normal, and I'm struggling to understand what's going on. My name is Erica, and I'm a 29-year-old management analyst from North Carolina. I'm married to Felix, a 30-year-old nurse from North Carolina. Felix and I were supposed to celebrate our 1-year anniversary 1 month ago, but we couldn't because Felix's mother became very sick and he had to rush home to take care of her. I offered to go too, but Felix advised that I stayed back home since I had to go to work almost every day. Even though that was the excuse he gave, I know that he was just trying to indirectly tell me no to waste my time. You see, my marriage to Felix is kind of what one would call a forbidden marriage. Felix and I initially wanted to elope to get married because both our families were not interested in us getting married. Our parents despise each other, and it's actually because of a family feud that has gone on for over 10 years. Felix and I are actually neighbors, or rather we were neighbors. We used to live in the same neighborhood with our families. I was 19 years old when the first rivalry between our families began, and Felix was just 20 years old. I think the fight was over a driveway or piece of land. Or was it a parking spot? I don't remember, but I know that our parents despised each other after that. I never even looked at him twice because I thought I was being loyal to my family. Even though we attended the same college, I just tried my best to stay away from him. Who would have ever imagined that both their children would end up getting married one day? I didn't imagine it, and our parents certainly didn't imagine it either. It was just something that happened out of the ordinary. It was over 3 years ago when I met him at my internship in Los Angeles. Both of us were away from home, and we coincidentally had our internship in the same state even though it was not in the same company. We ran into each other one day, and that's when the drama began. Long story short, we had an affair and I actually got pregnant. I'm not even joking or trying to play smart. We didn't talk at first because we wanted to keep up with our family feud, but that didn't work for long. If you find yourself in a foreign environment and you're trying to adapt to the changes, it's only going to help you if you find your neighbor and college student. I was glad to see someone I knew, and the fact that we were neighbors just made it better. We started talking, and then we became friends. We started dating 3 months later, and that was it. 1 year later, I got pregnant. I'm not proud of it, and I'm still regretting it till this day. I don't regret getting pregnant with my child. I just regret getting pregnant without marrying him first. That made my parents very angry. When I first told them I was pregnant, they flared up. But guys, their reaction when they realized that Felix was the one responsible was the worst. It was a very bad situation, and both our families gave us a hard time. My mother insisted that Felix had to marry me no matter what. We loved each other and knew it was going to get to that, but we wanted to do so in our own time. My parents didn't accept that at all. They made it clear that if we couldn't wait before getting intimate, we had to rush into marriage too. I insisted that I gave birth to my child before getting married, and my parents accepted. After giving birth to my daughter, Felix's mother decided to become a thorn in my flesh. That woman brought up 1,000 reasons why I shouldn't marry her son. In fact, she called me a loose woman for getting pregnant out of wedlock. I don't understand. Is Felix not lost for impregnating a woman out of wedlock too? But no, her double standards just had to be involved in everything. She was so stuck up that she refused to come see me even after I gave birth. It was only her husband and daughter that had the courtesy to come see me. I was very shocked. My parents made sure that Felix and I got married within less than 1 month after I gave birth to my daughter, Eloise. I didn't have a problem with getting married by that time. Felix and I moved to Arizona after getting married because we needed to get away from the toxicity our parents were bringing into our marriage. Every gathering turned into a quarrel or fight and someone had to go home angry. Even our wedding reception was not spared, so we had to leave. The fact that we watched our parents insult each other made it hard for us to have a good marriage because it was affecting our relationship. Eloise was still a very little child and she was barely 2 months old when we moved here. I had to get my job transfer and Felix's uncle helped him with it. I earn a good amount of money monthly and so does Felix. We had enough money to buy a house in Arizona after spending 2 weeks in a hotel. I didn't take a break from work even though I'm still taking care of my child, Eloise. Even while she was still 3 months old, I either took her to work or I hired a nanny. My mom is one of the people that advised me not to stop working after marriage even though it was temporary. She still feared the possibility of Felix suddenly leaving me and she never fully trusted his intentions about me. I don't blame them because I can see the results now. My husband just suddenly slipped divorce papers under the door after not seeing me for 1 whole month. I don't even know what's going through his head right now. Felix didn't have a problem with me staying home to work because he also believed that I had a right to water my career since we didn't really plan to settle down as fast as we did. For the first 6 months of our marriage, Felix and I didn't have any problems because we were away from our parents and their feud. Life was good and our daughter made it better. Eloise is literally the exact photocopy of me. We look alike a lot and she has every facial feature I have. My mom actually knelt down and gave God thanks when I sent her my daughter's 6 months picture. She was thankful that her grandchild looked nothing like the family she despised. But the problems between Felix and I started from that moment onward. It was very difficult to understand why we suddenly had to go through that. I don't even know how to explain what suddenly happened between us. We began to disagree a lot and I could tell that we had more disagreements than agreements. 2 months after Eloise turned 6 months, Felix and I sat down and decided to iron out our issues. We talked it through and promised each other not to let petty things ruin our marriage. That worked and we stopped having issues. We only had normal couple disagreements that only lasted 5 minutes. That was all there was to it. Our anniversary was 1 month ago and we were fine before then. There were no issues and we were even planning a very grand party to celebrate it together. That's why I don't understand why I was suddenly served divorce papers out of nowhere. I don't know why this suddenly happened and it's taking a lot of patience for me not to suddenly get angry. I don't get why Felix thinks it's right to do this to me. Just 3 days to our anniversary, he got a call from his sister and she was crying on the phone. We got to know that his mother had been hospitalized and it was for a very serious illness. At first I didn't understand why it suddenly had to happen when we're waiting to celebrate our anniversary, but I felt guilty for feeling that way and I told myself that there was no way she could control her own body. Felix left the very next day and insisted that I stayed in Arizona with Eloise. I planned on following him and using the opportunity to visit my own parents and show them their granddaughter, but since Felix wasn't in support, I decided to forget about it and just stay back. I didn't expect the trip to last for a full month at all. That also came across as a shock for me and I was very surprised. I called him regularly and at some point, he told me to stop calling and suggested that he would call me himself since he was busy at the hospital. He promised to call when he had the chance. He didn't fail in his promise for the first 2 weeks. He called at least once a day and I inquired about his mother's health while he inquired about me and Eloise. 2 weeks ago, he said he wouldn't be able to call anymore because his mother had to go into surgery and he wanted to spend time in the hospital with her. He said he wouldn't be able to find time to call. I told him there was no need to worry and we decided to text ourselves once in a while. I texted him every evening and he answered once in a while. Just 2 days ago, I texted him but he didn't reply and I just thought he was busy. So, when I saw the divorce papers yesterday, I almost fell to the ground out of shock. My daughter just turned 1-year-old about a month ago and if not for her, I would have scattered the house. What is the meaning of all these? I'm asking myself if I'm in a bad dream because it honestly feels like one. Talk of a plot twist and funny situation, and this is the perfect example. Divorce papers suddenly just 1 month after our anniversary? We kissed goodbye and hugged each other for hours when we last saw each other, and that was just a month ago. Why is he suddenly divorcing me? For what? I was so confused that I had to sit down and shut down all my devices because I didn't want to be tempted to tell my parents. They will make Felix regret it. I don't want to jump into conclusions, and I don't want to tell anyone till I know for sure. I decided to share this on Reddit and ask you all what could be the possible reason for this. I'm seriously lost. I can't tell anyone close to me, so I hope that you guys can help me. I've been trying to reach out to Felix, but he's ignoring me and he hasn't returned any of my texts. I'm honestly very desperate and I don't know what next step to take. Your advice and guidance is very needed during this time. Update. I've never been this confused in my life, guys. Trust me when I tell you this because it's honestly the truth. I've never had to sit down this much and cry my eyes out. I didn't even worry this much when I found out I was pregnant about 2 years ago. I was worried, but it wasn't this bad. This has to be one of the worst periods of my life, and I'm not even trying to mince words. I sat down for days and cried my eyes out. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to leave and just go and see him back in our hometown, but I couldn't because I had to go to work so I could warm and provide. Felix had taken leave from work, so he wasn't earning at all. I had to earn and take care of the bills in the house. I'm still left in the dark, and even though many of you in the comments tried to cheer me up, it's still not easy to be left in the dark at all. I continued to call him day and night, but he's not picking. He's very wicked to do that to me, and I can't imagine why he would do that. What did I do to Felix, and why is he treating me this way? Does he think it's that easy to just stay idle without knowing what you did wrong after being served divorce papers? I don't know what to do, and Eloise has started asking questions. She wants to know why her daddy is no longer calling her and why her mommy is spending minutes crying. She's just a 1-year-old plus child and can't talk fluently or understand much, but she cries, and when I ask her what's wrong she calls her daddy's name or she tries to clean my face. I can't even focus on work, and it breaks my heart to get left in the dark. I keep asking myself each time and second, what did I do? What mistake did I make? Why is he divorcing me? I've asked, but absolutely nothing is giving me the answers I need. None of my questions have been answered, and more questions are even piling up. It's hard, and I've tried, but let's just see how it goes. I will not forgive Felix if I realize that he's doing all of this without a good reason. I will make him regret it if he's putting me through this because of something petty. I know what I have done for that man. I'm not even trying to talk about finances because we both have our own money. I'm trying to talk about how I supported him from the moment we started dating. We did our internship in the same state, and I had no problem inconveniencing myself for him. I would leave my apartment and visit him to make him food. I would take care of him when he was sick and dedicate time to making him feel better. I did all those things because I cared about him. I supported him even when my parents were ready to insult him and degrade him after they found out we had an affair. Even though he didn't really stand against his parents for me, I did that for him. I refused to listen to my mother and marry another man. She went as far as looking for a man that was easy to marry me even after I gave birth to Eloise. My mother brought lists of men that didn't care that I was a woman with another man's child. But I refused to marry all of them and promised Felix I'd always choose him no matter what. I told him I won't marry someone else, and I kept my promise. Even when he was transferred to another state instead of Arizona while we moved to Arizona, I still supported him till he was able to get transferred back. He's a nurse and he works a lot. I don't give him a hard time. I'm a management analyst and I work a lot too, yet I still try to take care of our baby. I never complained. Not once. So, why does he think he has the audacity to send me divorce papers after 1 month of going away? How do you spend a whole month away from your family and then your wife wakes up to see divorce papers under the door? It has to be a prank. That's the lie I want to tell myself. I want to believe that even though those divorce pairs look professional and have appropriate titles, it's still a prank. I'll fake it till I believe it, because if I find out the truth, all hell will break loose and not even Felix would be free from my wrath. I'll be going to see my parents in 1 week if I realize that Felix still continues to ignore me. I'll go and let Felix know what an angry woman can do when you slip divorce papers under the door. Update 2. I've always heard the saying that wonders shall never really end, and right now, I believe that's true. I don't think the wonders I've experienced plan on ending anytime soon. Before I go on, I want to thank every single person that has dedicated their time to my story. Thank you all for your words of encouragement, and thank you for not putting me down. I appreciate it a lot, guys. Now, moving on, I'll let you guys know exactly what has been happening and how I've been trying my best to deal with all of it. Even after my efforts to reach out to Felix, none of it worked. It seemed like he blocked me, so I packed my bags 1 week later and left Arizona. I didn't call his sister or father in advance. In fact, I didn't even call my own parents in advance. I didn't want anyone to expect my presence. I didn't want Felix to hear about it in case he would run away. I wanted to catch him red-handed, then pour out all my anger. I know that his mother is out of the hospital, yet he refused to let me know. He just decided to stay back there and keep me in the dark. Maybe he thinks that just because he could easily get me pregnant, he could easily divorce me too. I'll be glad to let him know that I do not plan on making the same mistake twice at all. The only way I was able to know that his mother had been released from the hospital was through my parents. They weren't even aware that Felix had not been with me. It was only after they spotted him recently that they called me and asked me why I didn't accompany him back. I didn't tell them about the divorce. I just told them that I had been occupied with work, and that was why I just decided to stay home and get myself back together. My parents understood my plight, and they didn't try asking more questions after that. But I didn't let them know that I planned on coming. I wanted them to stay in the dark so they won't be able to notify Felix ahead of time by mistake. I came here 1 week ago, and it's been drama upon drama. I knew that this was going to be messy, but I never imagined that it would be as messy as it currently is. I told myself that I needed to set things right, but right now, it seems like my parents would be more than enough help for me. When my parents spotted me and Eloise at the front door, they were very shocked. They practically dragged me in and started searching for bruises. My mother even went as far as asking me if I had bruises. I'd not been home in a very long time, so they just imagined that if I suddenly showed up, there had to be something wrong. I assured them that I was fine and I needed to freshen up. Yes, guys, I had to have a long bath. My parents were swooning over their granddaughter while I rushed to my old room to freshen up. Some of my old clothes were still neatly kept in my closet, so I didn't need to unpack immediately. I just got dressed and joined my parents in the living room. They asked me if everything was fine once again, and I assured them that I was fine. We ate dinner together, and my parents, Eloise, and I all slept on the very big mattress in their room. I'm their only child, so I know how much it hurt them for me to just leave to another state like that. They never imagined that I'd get married that fast and just leave them alone. That's the reason why Felix had to be mad to think he could just discard me after I'd sacrificed so much just to get with him. I'd lost a lot for him, and I couldn't just forget it out of nowhere. After bathing myself and Eloise the next morning, I asked my parents to watch over her while I left for Felix's parents' house. Immediately I got to the front door, I could hear how his sister practically panicked when she saw me from the window. Our eyes met, and she ran to God knows where. I don't know why she took so long to open the door. Even while she tried greeting me and asking unnecessary questions like, "Why are you suddenly here? What happened?" I ignored her and asked where Felix was. She tried lying to me and telling me he wasn't around, but I knew that the fact that she had spent almost 5 minutes before opening the door meant that she went to notify him of my presence. I went straight to Felix's room because I'd been there before and I knew where his room was located. His sister tried to stop me, but I pushed her away and made sure I pulled on the door as hard as I could. It was locked from the inside, but I didn't give up. "I give you 2 minutes to unlock this door, or else I promise you that I'll grab my father's hunt gun and blow up your door." Those were my exact words to Felix. He unlocked the door immediately after I said that because he was aware that my father really had a gun he used for hunting. Immediately I set my eyes on Felix, my hands just hit his face. I didn't plan on doing it, it just happened. I was so angry and that was my only way of venting. I'd not seen him in almost 2 months and the fact that he looked so healthy and normal while even my parents suggested that I lost weight made me very angry. Felix got very angry and if not for his sister that intervened he almost hit me back. I was not proud of the fact that I hit him but I will not take it back. If a man could leave his wife and child like that then he deserved whatever came for him. I asked his sister to give us space to talk because I still had a lot that I wanted to say to him. She hesitated at first, but one stern look that I gave her was enough to make her run away. Felix looked like he didn't want to have a conversation with me, but I didn't care. I went into his room and then I sat down with my hands crossed. I picked the door before sitting down because I knew that there was every possibility of his parents trying to cut short the conversation. Especially his mother. "You sent me divorce papers, why?" Those were the first words I said to him and I did it as calmly as possible. I didn't trust what would have come out of my mouth if I just said everything that I had in mind. I expected him to laugh and say it was a prank. I expected him to apologize and say he was drunk. I just wanted to hear anything except what he said because what he said broke my heart to pieces. "I sent you divorce papers because I found out that Eloise isn't my daughter." Yes, guys, Felix had the audacity to open his mouth and tell me that. I swear that if not for the possibility of alerting his parents and causing a scene, I would have preferred to fight it off with him so we both could know that he's more powerful. I would have preferred getting beaten up because that shake would hurt less. How could Felix accuse me of cheating on him? That's what he did. By saying that Eloise isn't his daughter, he meant that I cheated on him and got pregnant for another person. He went too far. There's nothing anyone would say to me that would change my mind. That man went too far. I asked him what gave him the audacity to accuse me of doing that and he said he had proof. I got so angry that I cursed him out with all the strength in me. I asked him to show the proof and he said his mother told him that I had a lover in Florida before I met him and that he was one of the men that were ready to marry me after I got pregnant. He also told me that his mother told him that the same man that was suspected to be Eloise's father came to tell her the truth himself. Wow, just wow. That was the only thing I said to the fool I called my husband. His mother? The same woman that wanted to make sure we didn't get married? He wanted to take her word over mine? I didn't even stay back to listen to him. I ran out of the room and barged into his parents' room without knocking. You guys won't believe that the woman that caused havoc in my marriage was sitting pretty on her bed watching a movie like the queen she thought she was. I don't know why my parents didn't live in the ghetto. If I had that sort of training, I would have cared less if I showed that woman the level of anger I had in me. I asked her why she would tell her son I cheated on him and pinned another pregnancy on him. The first thing she could say to me was ask me why I didn't knock on the door before entering. I ignored her, then asked her the same question I asked in the beginning. She didn't expect me to be as angry as I was, and that scared her a lot. She didn't know what to do at the end of the day, so she stood up and told me she had proof for saying what she said. I could tell from the way she stood confidently that she had regained her strength and she was well again. I guessed that she'd been healthy for a long time because that's the only way she'd have time to spread rumors. She said she met up with the real father of Eloise after she did her own investigation. I don't want to get into details and recount everything she did because the more I think about it, the angrier I actually become. I don't want to continue digging my nails into my palms because my parents will only get more upset. That woman told me that after Felix sent her Eloise's 6 months pictures, she realized that Eloise looked nothing like Felix and that she only looked like me. That made her suspicious and fueled the doubts she had in her mind before, so she decided to dig into my past and ask questions, and that's when she remembered the man that had visited my house asking to marry me. She said she went in search of him and realized that he was the real father of the child. Even though I'd been upset, I had to laugh because everything was truly laughable. The fact that Het's story and Felix's story didn't match was funny. Felix said his mother told him that the real father of Eloise can't see her himself, and then his mother said she went to meet him. First of all, I pointed out the fact that both their stories made no sense. After doing that, I looked Felix in the eye and called him a fool. The fact that he ghosted me for 2 months and cut off all communication with his daughter just because of a stupid conspiracy theory his mother, who despises my family, cake up with Judy, showed me that I married the wrong man. I couldn't believe that Felix put me through all that just because he trusted his mother's words over mine. 2 months. I'd spent 2 months crying my eyes away and asking myself what I did wrong. Me? Lied about my daughter's father? How? The guy they are talking about was my ex-boyfriend and we dated in college. My mother is very familiar with him and he's the same guy that helped my father when he almost got robbed of his car. Since that day, my father has become very fond of him. Even after we broke up, he still came to the house once in a while. While I was in Florida and was dating Felix, we met up for coffee one day because he was there for work and wanted to see me. My parents were not aware I was dating Felix then and they still believed I'd get back with the guy. His name is Leo. They encouraged Leo to take me out for shopping and lunch. He did so for 1 week and I didn't refuse because he was and still is a very good friend of mine. He knew I was dating Felix and there were boundaries. He even had a girlfriend at that time and she accompanied him to see me. His girlfriend at that time was my old high school classmate, so we had fun together. When I got pregnant, my mother reached out to as many people as she could, hoping to find a match other than Felix. I'd asked her not to because it was embarrassing, but she refused to listen and she did as she wished. Leo was single back then and when I gave birth, he told me he was ready to marry me and that he didn't care if I had a child. I already told you guys I had a lot of people ready to marry me earlier, right? Now, I don't want to sound condescending to Felix, but I'll still say this because I said it to him that same day. Leo is a crypto trader that earns a lot daily. He's very smart in that aspect and he even holds several awards. So I had to ask Felix that if Leo is truly the father of Eloise and he asked to marry me, why would I refuse? Why would I pin the pregnancy on him? Leo earns way more than Felix does, so what reason do I have to make Felix the father? If I cheated on him with Leo, why would I go for Felix? What does Felix have to offer that Leo doesn't? I went for my father's child and I went for the man I actually loved. I told Felix that the only reason I married him was because I loved him and wanted to be with him. I also wanted to make sure my child grew up with her father. Felix and his mother still tried accusing me of lying, but I left the house. I went home and told my parents all about what happened. I told them I want a DNA test conducted in 4 different hospitals and immediately after the results are out, I'll sign the divorce papers and divorce Felix. That was 2 days ago. I cried my eyes out for hours because I was embarrassed and hurt that my own husband questioned my character. My parents were very angry and they went to see Felix and his parents. I didn't stop them. Not even when I heard the loud arguments that disturbed the whole neighborhood. I have every right to be angry and so do my parents. I requested 2 hospitals of Felix and his family's choice and then 2 hospitals from my family's choice. I'm ready to prove them wrong because never in my life did I think I'll be conducting a DNA test. Update 3. What's that saying again? Oh, I now remember. He who laughs last, laughs best. I had my bad days, but now I'm smiling. The fans tests were conducted 6 months ago and the results all came out and proved me right. The hospitals from Felix's side said he was the father and the hospitals from my side said he was also the father. Immediately after the results proved me innocent, I signed the divorce papers. Felix tried to beg me and ask for forgiveness, but nothing he said changed my mind. He went too far and that broke our marriage. If he couldn't trust me, then N couldn't trust him too. If he could ghost me for 2 months and slide divorce papers under the door 1 month after our 1-year anniversary and 1 month after he left the house, then he could do anything in the future. I'd seen hell in just 1 year of our marriage. I didn't want to know what my future with him looked like. His mother tried playing those mind games by kneeling and thinking I'll be like, "Oh no. Please stand up. It's fine." My parents chased her, Felix, his sister and his father out. For 1 month while I worried away myself, they planned to disgrace me and watched Felix try to divorce me. He wanted a divorce and he got it. Now he's the one paying for child support. The fact that he couldn't call me or come have a conversation with me but had the time to file for divorce without my knowledge is funny. He wanted to be the alpha husband who served his wife divorce papers, but he ended up being the fool who got the shock of his life. My parents helped me work back my transfer and I'm back to living with them. Eloise has started school. Since Felix is a nurse, he can't really work his transfer as normally as I can do. He can't get transferred from Arizona yet. He can't travel back and forth, so he can only see Eloise once in a while, and that's how I want it. My mom is still trying to play matchmaker between me and Leo, but this time, I think I might just end up getting back with him. If he could wait for me for years and even stay persistent, I'm sure he's the husband I should have had. Oh, and newsflash, his mother lied. She didn't speak to Leo at all, and he confirmed that himself. She just let her group of friends put things into her head because Eloise looked exactly like me. One of her friends is also the mother of Leo's ex-girlfriend who accompanied him to come see me. She's the one that told her Leo had taken me shopping sometimes. That's what made her lie. I'm glad I shared this worst experience of mine with you all. Felix went too far and I just couldn't deal with that anymore. I'm back where I really belong. I'm in Arizona with my parents and my child. I might also be where my boyfriend is. I'm not ready for a relationship yet, but I know it's only a matter of time before Leo makes me swoon. It's been 6 months, guys, I'm ready. My husband didn't think twice before he took revenge on me because I cheated on him with his best childhood friend. I know what I did was wrong and I take full responsibility for it. My husband's anger was justified because he had every right to be angry with me. Even if I wanted to cheat, it shouldn't have been with my husband's best childhood friend. He hit me right where it hurts. Due to my foolish mistake, I ended up losing my marriage and managed to split 2 friends that had been together before I even came into the picture. Well, his friend also managed to destroy my marriage. I'm not trying to blame anyone. I fully take responsibility for my actions. I wish I could turn back the hands of time and rewrite everything that went wrong. But I guess there's nothing I can really do now. I know you all would judge me after listening to this, but I hope you all would learn something from this. Hi, my name is Cherry and I am 26 years old. The name of my husband is Chris. He is a 31-year-old businessman. My husband and I have been married for 4 years now. Chris and I have known each other ever since we met at an annual event in New York. We became close and started dating for months. Chris and I went on dates, outings, and I was even introduced to his friends and family. Chris was very close to his mother and was very fond of his best friend. Honestly speaking, Chris and his best friend were practically brothers because of how close they were. The name of my husband's best friend is Matthew. They grew up together, went to the same school, and are similar in character. Among my husband's childhood friends, Matthew was his favorite then. I became really close to Chris's friends and family not quite long after we started dating. We dated for a few months before we finally got married to each other. When we were dating, Chris brought me lots of gifts, took care of me, and oftentimes was always there for me. After 4 months of dating and getting to know each other's family and friends, Chris and I decided to tie the knot together. We had a simple but lovely wedding and both of our families and friends came to rejoice with us. I felt safe because I was loved by many, most especially from Chris' family. I never thought I would be loved the way I was. The first few months of our marriage was blissful. We carried on with how we used to do when we were still dating. Chris often took me out and made sure I was comfortable. Before I met my husband, I was working at a sales department store. I often had a hectic work schedule, so Chris and I decided that I would take care of the house while he fends for the both of us. We also decided not to have kids after getting married until we were both ready. Frankly speaking, I wasn't even ready to have any child at that time because I wasn't emotionally ready to take care of a child. I wanted to enjoy my marriage and also to get close to my husband more. The thought of being left alone in the house with an infant and also doing house chores scared me a lot. We made that decision before Chris and I got married. I wanted to clarify him on that so it won't be an issue when we finally tied the knot. My husband agreed and also saw reasons with me. So guys, months went by and before you know it, my husband and I had our first wedding anniversary together. Everything went well and we had an anniversary dinner together. We exchanged gifts and professed our love to each other. Well, Chris and I were living happily together until I was getting tired of everything. My new daily schedule was based on repetition, which irritated me. I was used to dressing and leaving the house and not staying at home and only cleaning and cooking alone. That life isn't for me. I never knew it would turn out that way, if not I wouldn't have agreed to it. I wanted to work and not be idle. I tried discussing it with my husband and he asked me if I was in any way lacking anything at the house. He told me not to bother myself to look for a job, that he would work hard to fend for us. If I had listened then, I wouldn't have ended up like this. My desperation of wanting to have a job cost me my marriage. I regretted everything. So guys, I got tired of being a full-time housewife. I needed to go out to work. All efforts to convince my husband to let me go to work failed. I didn't plan on having an affair with anyone, at least not with my husband's best friend Matthew. I was only tired of my daily routine and wanted to change it. On the other hand, Matthew is a 31-year-old businessman. Matthew and my husband were really close before everything was messed up. I only got to know Matthew through my husband Chris. One of the things I liked about my husband was that he didn't share anything about his marital life with his best friend, even though they were best of friends. Matthew always came to the house anytime he felt like coming. His constant coming was beginning to get on my nerves. I tried talking to my husband about it, but then again I didn't want to come between them. Matthew is very good looking and the type that every lady would want to be his girlfriend. He was that charming. I never liked the idea of being alone with Matthew because he is the type that likes flirting with ladies at any given opportunity. Sometimes, I wondered how Chris managed to grow up with someone like Matthew. My husband was a different version of his best friend Matthew. Chris often told Matthew to stop his reckless behavior and settle down. But Matthew never listened. Matthew never really gave Chris and I space ever since we celebrated our wedding anniversary. He was constantly coming in and out of the house. There were times Matthew would spend the night at home before he leaves the following day. He was practically living with us then. This sudden behavior made me restless and I tried talking about it with my husband. But my husband thought I was trying to come in between him and his best friend. I had my reasons for not having Matthew around at that time. There were times Matthew literally made advances towards me even when my husband was at home. Those were one of the ways Matthew was behaving towards me. I didn't want to tell my husband because he wouldn't believe me. He would think maybe I am making up stories to split them apart. My husband went on business trips, leaving me all at home. Matthew used this to his own advantage and constantly came over to the house. Due to how my husband trusted his best friend, he would tell him to keep an eye on me anytime he was out of town. He never knew that his friend also had other motives for coming to his house, and I was foolish enough to fall right into his trap. I am very ashamed of myself even as I write this. It makes no sense that I cheated on my husband with Matthew, his childhood friend. It's even crazy that his best friend was my affair partner. Matthew got me and I take full responsibility because I'm an adult and can make decisions for myself. Due to my husband's constant business trips, we didn't spend much time together. This happened immediately when Chris was given a different position at his workplace. My husband was in charge of meeting up with clients' demands and making them satisfied. His job required him to travel a lot. So, he was always busy and mostly not at home. One day, Chris and I had a back-and-forth argument after he told me about how unclean the house had been and my nonchalant attitude towards it. I was very irritated by those words and I angrily told him to get a maid if he always wanted the house to be cleaned. That made him furious and he walked out on me. I kept asking myself if that was his plan all along. Trapping me into marrying him and caging me at home just doing nothing. I told myself that I should have given it a big thought before agreeing to marry him. I never knew that being a full-time housewife would have a big toll on me. At that point, I was gradually losing my mind. I wasn't made for that kind of lifestyle. So guys, after that argument that we had, Chris didn't come back home until later that night. He met me on the chair in the living room watching my favorite night movie. Of course I was mad at him for how he behaved during the day. He walked up to me and told me that we needed to talk. I wanted to decline at first, but I gave him that respect and so I stayed. Chris told me to take a break from doing house chores for the time being. He suggested that I take a vacation with my friends so it would enable me to clear my head and also light up my mood. He noticed how I was behaving and how I was reacting to things. I agreed to it because I also wanted to avoid losing my mind at that time. 2 days later, my husband arranged a trip for me and my friends to hang out together. I packed my bags and everything I needed for that trip. It was time to go and my husband walked me to the car. I told him I would send him lots of pictures and asked him to take care of the house while I was away. We joked around before telling each other goodbye. I was very excited about the trip because I needed it. My friends and I were out of town and we had fun. We went to see different interesting places and took a lot of pictures. I fulfilled my promise by sending my husband some of the pictures we took. He liked them and even told me to take more and make sure I enjoy myself. Of course, I did enjoy the trip. If there was anybody that had fun to the fullest on that trip, it was definitely me. Few days after we were out of town, my husband wasn't picking up my calls like he used to. He was the one calling me throughout the first 2 days that we arrived at our destination. I got very disturbed about it and I told my friends my concerns. They noticed how uneasy I was too and asked what was wrong. After I explained everything to them, they told me not to worry and that maybe he was caught up with work and didn't have time. I agreed because Chris had a hectic work schedule, but I was not fully convinced that it was because of work that he hadn't called me. A lot of thoughts ran through my mind and I began to think that my husband was cheating on me with another lady. I began to suspect that he had tricked me into going on vacation so he could bring in another woman. I thought to myself and asked myself different questions. The trip was meant to last for another week, but I cut it short. Yes, guys, I shortened the trip to 3 days. My friends were angry with me for cutting short the trip and they told me that I was unnecessarily overthinking things. I ignored all they said to me and told them to start packing their bags. They stopped complaining and began packing that same day. We left the very next day. I was very desperate because I wanted to see if Chris tricked me into leaving the house so he could have his fun. It had been 2 days and I still didn't hear from him. He hadn't been picking up my calls and that made me worried, guys. So guys, we got home and I didn't meet my husband at home. I was surprised because I thought he would be at home. I got very worried and began calling him, but it wasn't reachable at that time. I had the thought that he probably switched off his phone at some point because I was constantly calling him. While I was busy lamenting to myself, Matthew walked in just like that without knocking. I got very angry because it was something he always did. He always came in and out of our home anytime he liked. When Matthew saw me, he was surprised and he asked me why I was home and what the trip meant for 5 days. "What are you doing here? Are you not supposed to be clearing your head?" Those were his exact words. I stared at him and paid no attention to what he was saying because obviously he was trying to mock me. He saw how uneasy I was and he asked if everything was okay. I told him I did not need his help at first, but I got too worried and I thought I could trust him, so I explained everything to him and told him the reason why my trip was cut short. Matthew's response at that time made matters worse. He told me that I was right to feel the way I was feeling and that I should follow whatever my heart told me at that moment. He got the best of me because I was in my feelings, so I gave in to his ideas. I asked Matthew where Chris was and he didn't give me a reasonable answer. He just told me he went out for work. After a few minutes of talking with Matthew, he said he needed to attend to something and he left. I waited for my husband throughout that day and I was unable to reach out to him. That night, I gave a thought to what Matthew said and thought that maybe my instincts were right about Chris. The following morning, Chris returned and I decided to confront him about his whereabouts for the past few days and why he had been ignoring my calls and not responding to my messages. Chris said that he had been busy with work ever since I left for my vacation and that he was at a place where he couldn't reach his phone and at some point, his phone battery had died. I didn't believe him because of the way he said it nonchalantly, and at this point, I was gradually beginning to think that Chris was cheating on me and he was using his work to cover it. I wanted to press further, but he told me he was tired. My husband didn't ask about my trip or even care to know if everything was okay. At that period, I kept thinking about what my mind was telling me about Chris and kept asking myself if my husband was really cheating on me. I decided to let it go for some time since Chris had just returned and he was tired. Matthew didn't stop coming to our house and he was building on my suspicions daily. He fed me with lies and made me believe that Chris was cheating on me. On the other hand, Chris was not helping matters. There were days I could hear him speaking to somebody on the phone for hours and I wasn't happy with it. He always chatted late at night and sometimes I slept before him. We didn't usually go to bed together ever since he started going on business trips, but I discovered that he wasn't coming to bed early when he was around. I reached out to my friends and told them that what I told them during the trip had become a constant thing. I thought he was going to change if we spoke about it. My friends encouraged me to work it out with my husband or try discussing it with him and that maybe it was not what I thought it was. A month later, the calling and late-night chats were reduced. I was somewhat happy because I felt like I was getting my husband back. A part of me thought that maybe I was wrong all these while and things were gradually going back to normal and I felt relieved. One day, I was at home when my husband came home saying that he had a surprise trip for me for our upcoming 2-year anniversary. I was very happy about it because my husband acted like everything was now back to normal. Few days later, I started making plans for the trip. I even called my friends telling them about the trip and I was happy. I listened to them when they told me I was overacting. Unknown to me, they were also in on the surprise, but kept it a secret from me. The day we were to go on the trip came and I was more surprised. All along I thought it was only me and Chris, but I never knew that we were going with my friends and Matthew. I was very surprised to see them, but was also excited because it was going to be fun. We arrived at our destination and settled in. We were tired and we all went to bed to rest for the night. The following morning we all had breakfast together and Chris told us the activities he had planned out for that day. We all went sightseeing and took a lot of interesting pictures. At that point, I thought that the trip was bringing me and Chris together. The activities that Chris planned were fun and we all enjoyed ourselves. The day of our anniversary came and Chris had a lot planned out. We went out for dinner and I enjoyed myself a lot. We also exchanged gifts and we left for our hotel for some fresh air. At that point, it was unknown to me Chris had a surprise planned for me. It was an after party with our friends, so we all partied throughout the night and we had a lot to eat and drink. We all enjoyed ourselves and went to bed that evening when it was all over because it was a successful day. I woke up the following morning with a hangover and I knew I must have really drank a lot the previous night. When I turned to the other side of the bed, I couldn't find Chris. You guys needed to see how I overrated and wondered where he must have gone so early in the morning. I didn't think much about it because I thought he must be around somewhere. So, I got up to take a pill for my hangover. When I thought about the previous night, I felt happy about how our anniversary went. I was happy that my husband could go out of his way to surprise me and everything felt perfect. I got up and got dressed for the day. While I was about heading out, I heard a knock on the door and I was surprised because I wasn't expecting anyone. My husband could have literally opened the door if he was the one, so I went and opened the door only to find Matthew with a cup of coffee standing at the door. He told me good morning and said that the coffee will help me with the hangover. I needed it, so I collected the coffee and thanked him. He asked me if he could enter. I refused, but then he said he meant no harm and that he wanted to tell me something really important. I asked him what could be so important that he had to come to my room so early in the morning. He told me that he saw Chris going out early this morning. I didn't see anything wrong with that and I told Matthew that Chris probably went out to get something. He looked at me with self-pity and said that he saw Chris driving out with a lady. I couldn't believe what Matthew was telling me, so I closed the door and picked up my phone to call Chris, but his phone was switched off. I left the room hurriedly and went to tell my friends about what Matthew had just told me. I told them that Chris had gone back to the way he was behaving before, and I told them that Matthew told me that he left with a lady. I asked myself how he could just leave without telling me. It was supposed to be our anniversary trip and we were supposed to be together. I tried reaching out to him, but his lines were switched off. My friends told me that he probably left for an urgent purpose and that I shouldn't jump into conclusion. They also assumed that the lady was a coworker or a business partner. I didn't buy into what they were saying because at that time, I felt like my mind was made up. My suspicions were right. To even think he had to leave without even waking me up made me angry. My friends didn't understand what I was saying because they believed that Chris would not cheat on me and I shouldn't follow the ideas I was developing. I left and went to my room and kept trying my husband's line, but it switched off. At some point, I got tired and I slept off. In the evening, my friends came and tried to cheer me up. I tried sending them off because I wasn't interested in partying at that point. I checked my phone and saw that Chris hadn't called or returned any of my messages. I got much persuasion from them and they told me I needed to forget about what was happening and that I needed to enjoy my anniversary weekend. I finally agreed to go out with them. So we got dressed and we went to the club. On our way to the club, I kept thinking about how my husband could leave me alone on the trip he had planned for me without telling me about it. I felt disappointed that Chris could do that to me. It was our anniversary, so I believed all work should have been put on hold, right? I was deep in my own thoughts when one of my friends, Jackie, said I shouldn't think too much about it and I should just have fun. We got to the club and we ordered drinks, and for a long time since Chris left, I felt present in the moment. I was beginning to get myself back and gradually forget about all that happened. We danced in the club and I was very happy because I wasn't thinking about anything at that moment. After spending about a few hours in the club, Matthew joined us. I was surprised to see him because I thought it was a girls' night out. But Jackie said she invited him for drinks since he was the only one left at the hotel and Chris was left. I said hi to Matthew and he kept stealing glances at me, which I found weird. I decided to brush it off and enjoy myself. Not quite long, I saw Jackie talking to a guy. With the way she was giggling excitedly, I knew she had found someone she was going home with. At that point we were already tipsy and Jackie came and asked if Matthew could drive the rest of us back to the hotel since she was leaving with the guy she had just met. I felt a type of way because she just met the guy, but I knew Jackie was an independent lady. Jackie left with the guy and me and my friends danced for a couple of hours before leaving. At that point we were all drunk except Matthew. Maybe it was a conscious decision because I never saw him taking any drink. It was time to go and we were all drunk, so Matthew helped us to the car and he drove us down to the hotel. At that point I wasn't thinking about Chris or what he did to me, I was just in the moment. So, Matthew helped me and my friends to our rooms. On getting into my room I blacked out at some point and that was the only thing I could remember. The following morning I woke up to the sound of something crashing on the floor. I woke up immediately and I couldn't believe what I saw next. I stood up holding my head up because I had a massive headache. I had a lot to drink the previous night because I wanted to forget about what my husband did. I looked up to see what just happened and I found my husband standing right in front of where I slept with disgust in his eyes. Before I could grasp what was going on, I realized that I was naked. I turned to the other side of the bed to see Matthew sleeping next to me. Yes, guys, Matthew and I spent the night together. My husband couldn't look me in the eyes and he told me he was disappointed in me. He walked up to Matthew and started beating him. He kept asking Matthew how he could sleep with his wife when they were supposed to be best friends. Matthew was mute and didn't respond to any of Chris' questions. He had the look of satisfaction on his face and I could tell he wasn't remorseful about what he did. My husband turned to me and asked me why I cheated on him with his best friend. At that point I cried my eyes out. I told him that I didn't know that happened and that Matthew took advantage of me. He didn't listen to me and he left angrily. I fell to my knees and I kept thinking about what I did. At that point I told myself that my marriage was over. I cheated with my husband's best friend. Matthew tried to console me, but that really got me upset. I asked him why he did that to me. And why did he take advantage of me like that? Matthew looked at me and asked me if that wasn't what I wanted to do in the first place. I thought you were always being suspicious about Chris. He asked me. I made it clear that the fact that I was suspicious didn't mean I planned on cheating on him. I asked him to get out of my room. He left and I felt like my whole world had crumbled. I didn't know what to do at that moment, so I decided to call Jackie. I called Jackie crying on the phone and she came over 30 minutes later. I explained to her how Chris saw me and Matthew naked on the bed and how Chris reacted. I didn't even know what happened because I blacked out at some point. I felt like at that moment my marriage was over. I told her about Matthew's reaction and she said she was very disappointed in me. Jackie had always told me not to allow Matthew to mess with my head. But I guess I fell for it. We made arrangements and we left the hotel back to our house. We all left except Matthew. Since the incident happened, I haven't seen Matthew. He was less important to me at that moment because all I was thinking about was how to reconcile with my husband. My friends and I left the hotel and went back home. So guys, I never thought that the trip that was meant to celebrate our anniversary was the one that ruined my marriage. I ended up cheating on my husband with his best childhood friend. When I got back home, the house was locked and I was not able to enter the house. I knocked at the door for a while and after a few minutes, it opened. A woman opened the door and I tried entering but she wouldn't allow me in. She then handed me some papers. When I checked it, it was divorce papers. I asked her who she was and what she was doing in my house. She told me she was the new housekeeper. I begged her to allow me inside but she said she was given strict orders not to allow me in. I was stranded because I didn't have anywhere else to go. I tried calling Chris but he wasn't picking up my calls. I asked her where Chris was and she just said he wasn't around. I went through the divorce papers and I saw that Chris has already signed it. I was very sad and so I decided to call my friend, Jackie, to come pick me up. After a few minutes, Jackie came and picked me up. We went to her house and I narrated my encounter with the new housekeeper and she was surprised. She tried calming me down and said that I should try speaking to Chris before I take any step. That was 2 days ago, guys. My husband is still not speaking to me. For the past few days now, I have still not been able to reach out to my husband. I have been looking at the divorce papers and I don't know what to do. I can't even get hold of him because his lines were off. I later discovered that Chris had blocked me on all platforms. I decided to contact my sister Annie so she could help me talk to Chris in order for us to meet up for me to explain what had happened in the hotel. Annie told me that she would get back to me if she talked to my husband. My husband didn't allow me in. He only communicated with me through our family lawyer and he said he didn't want to ever see me or have anything to do with me again. I begged the lawyer to help me talk to Chris, but he said that there was nothing left to talk about, that our marriage was already over. There's nothing more hurtful than never being able to find closure. Chris is really hurting me right now. There's nothing more hurtful than not being able to get closure in life. I can't believe that my husband is doing this to me. I know I'm wrong and that's why I want to apologize to him and talk to him. Even if he still ends up divorcing me, I just want to talk to him for one last time. What dirt if revenge is this? This is worse than anything I could have imagined. I hate his silence more than anything and the fact that he wants us to get a divorce without even seeing each other breaks my heart a lot. Chris knows me very well and that's why he's doing this. He knows about my tendency to have anxiety. He knows how much I hate not clearing things up. If this is his firm revenge, then it is very cruel. I've not been myself because of this whole scenario. Update. Hi guys, I'm back here again. I'm not happy to be back here because I am still hurting and nothing has really changed. The thought of writing this broke me all over again. I just want to write this because I don't want to leave you guys hanging without having any closure at all. Chris has done the worst possible thing to me. The fact that I got divorced without seeing my husband after that trip is very triggering. Chris blocked all forms of communication and extensively made sure that we had no opportunity to speak or even say goodbye one last time. I'm wrong and I made a very big mistake, so I don't really fault him for divorcing me. But he could have given me a little bit of time with him at least. This is the man I once loved. I still need to ask him why he kept leaving me alone and why he left the trip with a lady. I still need to ask him if he kept leaving for work purposes or if there were other reasons. These are important questions that Chris still hasn't answered. This is the worst thing to ever do to anybody. I don't know if he cheated and if he was seeing someone else. I don't know if he didn't cheat. He just left me to guess everything. I signed the divorce papers and 3 months ago, our marriage was dissolved. As a whole, I didn't have an opportunity to meet him and get things right. Nothing worked even after I tried. I didn't give up after the divorce. I still tried to go to his house and trash him, but all my efforts were still in vain. He kept ignoring me and making sure I couldn't enter the house. Even when I tried to come take my things before the divorce, I just found them outside the house. I couldn't even get into the house and do the packing myself. He even hired a housekeeper and seems to have moved on really fast. Matthew is another case that just gives me the ick. That guy gets on my nerves each time I think about him. I hate him with passion, and that's why I didn't let any of what happened go. I spoke to my lawyers and told them I wanted to take legal actions against him. I told them I was drunk that night and he should have known better rather than try to get under my pants. My lawyers reached out to his lawyers and a case was filed. His lawyers advised us to settle in court because I didn't really have evidence that I didn't consent. I pressed my lawyer not to settle, but he made me understand that without concrete evidence, I couldn't do a thing. We ended up settling and Matthew was ordered to pay for damages. I was not really content because what I really wanted was to see him getting punished and possibly arrested. I heard that Matthew is also trying to reach Chris, but he's also being locked out and I'm not the only one getting ignored. That gives me a little bit of comfort because it would hurt me more if I realized that I'm the only one being given the silent treatment. Chris is really wrong in that aspect because why does he feel it's okay to get mad and shut off all communication after he also decided to treat me badly? He's also at fault for leaving his wife alone on a trip he planned. Now he's punishing me but just ignoring me and not giving me a chance to clear things up. I guess our marriage was always headed for doom the moment he decided to let his best friend have control over us. I guess I'm divorced now, so I have to let the past go. Thank you all for following me on this journey. It ended here and I'm moving on. One of my cousins came to pick me up from Jackie's house. I'm not staying with her in England. I really needed the distance from everything.